you doing? Good evening. This is the March 26, 2018 meeting of the Development and Governmental Relations Subcommittee to Holyoke City Council. I'm the chairman. With me is Councilor Roman, Councilor Valentin, Councilor Tallman, Councilor Sullivan. In the room, we have Councilor McGivern, Councilor Leahy. Welcome all. The first item on our agenda are the prior meeting minutes. I don't think we've been supplied with prior meeting minutes. So the second item on the agenda, thank you, Ryan. Yeah, here you go. Here you go, Pete. Yeah. The second item on the agenda, I have a conflict of interest, so I will not be participating in this at all. So I'm going to turn this over to the Vice Chair, Michael Sullivan. Mike?
Thanks. Motion to take up item number 2 and open the public hearing?
No,
Sorry, just take up item number 2?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So, item number 2, that the Honorable City Council, in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B and the Holyoke Procurement Ordinance, vote to accept an offer from One Holyoke CDC to purchase a parcel of land located at 278 Pine Street for $1. Said parcel contains approximately .19 acres and is described in Holyoke Assessor's Record as map 004, block 06, parcel 013, and being more particularly described in deeds recorded in the Hamden County Registry of Deeds, Book 21088, page 399. The parcel is zoned downtown residential and has an assessed value of $31,200. Okay, open for discussion.
Motion to open up for discussion for the proponents to talk on the issue.
All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, is there anybody else here to speak about this also? Marcos? Yeah. Okay.
Right here, she wants to talk. I think she wants to.
Okay. Do we want
I
to
don't know, I just wanted to hear what she says. I don't have to say. If she wants to, we have to suspend the rules if somebody's going to speak.
Motion to
on it.
suspend the rules and allow the public to speak about their concerns in favor or against this that we're going to discuss.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Would you like to go to the microphone and,
You,
doesn't matter. You can wait if you
Proposal
want to
first,
hear,
yeah.
if you want to hear the proposal first, or,
yeah,
all right.
I think we should hear the proposal and then, if she wants to speak after.
Okay. I've only got one map for it. So. All right. Everybody knows where it is?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so, anything else? Okay, so, Mr. Dunn, would you like to start? Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I appreciate. They didn't have these when I was on the city council. In any event, Mr. Chairman and committee members, I thank you for taking this up this evening. I know it was on somewhat a short notice. It's been a project that's been somewhat on the fast track. Just to give you an overview and to answer any questions that you might have, this proposal to transfer the land is in connection with a project involving 1850 Northampton Street, and which is presently under ownership by People's Savings Bank. As you know, People's Savings Bank purchased the Yankee Peddler and contiguous parcels, one of which being this presently office building. I think over the years there might have been some boarding that took place within it, but in later years it was converted to offices, and it's part of the property that is presently owned by Peoples in their acquisition from the owners of the Yankee Peddler. The plans had been to tear this building down. It did not fit within their plans to relocate a banking facility on that site, even though they're going to try to retain as much of the current historical pieces that they can to that building. This plan was the plan was for this building to be torn down, and Michael Moriarty from One Holyoke had an idea that possibly this building could be saved. Let me back up for a minute as well, and I know you have it in your communication from Michael tonight, which was handed out. Michael apologizes that he's not here. I know you're all familiar with Michael. the chief executive of One Hoyoke Development Corporation. He is on the State Board of Education. They had somewhat of a critical meeting tonight, and he had to attend that meeting, so he's asked that I, Martin Dunn, I should have identified myself first, as an attorney representing One Hoyoke, that I come here tonight to make the request on the proposal. So in any event, Michael had an idea that One Hoyoke might be able to acquire this structure from People's Savings Bank. He approached People's Savings Bank. They agreed to convey the building to One Hoyoke Development Corporation and to allow Michael to move it to a location that was suited for this structure. Michael, took stock in the different lots that were available throughout the city, and took notice of the lot at Pine and Hampshire Street that was vacant, a lot that's that is near the Wisteria Hearst Museum, obviously, that has a great historic value to this community, and thought that it might be just a perfect fit to acquire the structure from People's Bank, to move it, and it would be quite a move, to the corner of Pine and Hampshire Street, and to develop a home owner-occupied two-family home, keeping it in the historic components as best possible, to rebuild the porches. That's probably the only part that would have to be rebuilt on the exterior, to rebuild the porches, and to keep it as it's been over the past many years, and to develop a two-family home there, owner-occupied, with a restriction in the deed for 15 years or so, that the person owning it would have to live there, and to establish a housing development right there with this structure. So we've approached the city and asked the city if they would be willing to transfer the lot. If the city's willing to transfer the lot, One Hoyoke is willing to take on the project. And just for some historical perspective, Michael did some research. It seems as though that the facility was built in approximately 1923. In 1971, the Tamburis took it over for lodging when they bought the Yankee Peddler. And in any event, we think it would be a positive addition, one that was compatible with the neighborhood, would provide housing, would provide a structure that was back on the tax rolls, would be compatible to the Wisteria Hearst. I think it would make a nice, and just a nice addition to the area, which has a great historical significance already. So he's willing to undertake the project. It's going to be an expensive one, needless to say. As with all of their projects, One Hoyoke would look to a variety of sources, some grant money, some money they have, some CDBG money. He believes he can piece together everything that needs to be done to make the project a success. But the first step, obviously, is acquiring the land. And he's on a bit of a short timetable because Peoples is pushing him, either to they want to see something happen, or they have to make arrangements to have the property knocked down. So we're before you tonight asking for your support in allowing this project to go forward, and to answer any questions that we might answer. Again, Michael apologizes for not being here himself, but the city planning department has been tremendous in working with us. Planning and economic development has been tremendous in working on this project with us, and the mayor's office. So we're here tonight asking your support, and Michael intends on moving on this matter, if he gets your support, very, very quickly. And I think it's a project that can be accomplished, and I think would be an exciting project for the city, a beneficial project for the city in creating housing and tax revenues, and we think that it would also serve to elevate property values in the neighborhood. One of the concerns that was expressed to us by Councilor McGivern is that neighbors be notified. Michael, in fact, notified all of the neighbors in the area, Greater Springfield Habitat for Humanity. They've written a letter of support. For Harps LLC was one of the property owners. They've written a letter of support. Miguel Pacheco, he's written a letter of support. Richard Canoyer, I'm not sure we heard back from him. And Hampshire Walnut LLC, I'm not sure we heard back from them. But certainly these went out last week. The letters just describing what the project was and indicating to those abutters that there was a public hearing tonight. Michael has certainly heard no negative feedback, and as just stated, several of the abutters have indicated their unconditional support for the project. So with that, I would turn it over to Marcos, and if Marcos, do you have anything to add? Certainly.
Another dimension of the project is that the lot at 278 Pine used to be, as I think I mentioned at the last DGR meeting, a multi-story building that was in quite dilapidated shape. It was already collapsing in on itself. So for public safety reasons, we really had to take down the structure. And the city used Community Development Block Grant funds for that, CDBG. Federal regulations around CDBG only allow you to dedicate a certain percentage of your annual allocation to demolition, and this one was a costly one. So the way the project was conceived wasn't as a mere demolition and closeout of the project, but it had to have another HUD outcome tied to it. Originally, until very recently, that outcome was intended to be public facilities. At first, it was talking about having an extended parking space for the senior center. Green space was something that was also considered. But this actually allows the city to have an outcome and a closeout of the use of those funds. That was a necessary expenditure for public safety, but that doesn't have to categorize it merely as demolition. So it wouldn't go against the city's cap for demolition. The outcome would be an affordable housing unit. Of course, locally we would have another outcome, which is the historic preservation of a property that's in salvageable shape. So that's another consideration. It really solves a different problem for the city beyond just having the historic preservation of the property and providing an active use there.
Okay. Mark, let me ask you a few questions, and then we can
Sure.
continue here, and we'll hear from the rest of the group. First of all, is there going to be any cost in this move to the city? Are there any lines in the way, any expenses that the city's going to have to undertake to support this?
No. In fact, the budget that One Holyoke is working on includes cost allocations for doing that kind of stuff. In any case, it would not be the city's responsibility to take on those costs.
Police over, I mean, this thing's going to be rolling down Beach Street, I would imagine.
Sure. Yes,
Franklin Street
absolutely.
or something. It's,
Yes, it would be the developer's responsibility to pay for police covering it, just like any private event.
As I talked to Michael today, Beach Street is one of the with the lack of the transmission lines not being on the sidewalk, so to speak. It's very compatible to this type of move. Beach Street is compared to other streets that you might have had some significant blockage problems.
Yeah, if you'd done it last week, we could have had a float in the parade, right? Okay, I see it's going to be below market, it's going to be sold at below market rate price. Now, how does that affect the property, the real estate tax? If we're giving this thing up for $1, are we also giving up, it's not, how is it going to be valued or assessed?
No, I believe the assessment would be on the value of the structure that was ultimately placed there. They would have to do an assessment of the property of the structure itself. So it wouldn't just be the with a lot, they would be assessing the structure.
Okay. What about zoning, Marcos? You know, setbacks, all of that kind of stuff. Is there any problems or other hurdles? I notice we're not hearing anything from the planning board on this.
Of course, it will depend on exactly how the developer sets it, but there's plenty of wiggle room, and I have a copy here that I can submit so that you can all have photocopies. The setbacks would essentially be 10 feet and on each side. While it's DR, the setbacks in DR are kind of quirky how they're set because they're the average of the next 5 properties on the same block, but because there are other vacant blocks, it's a quirk in the ordinance. You can't really take an average because there aren't structures everywhere. So it reverts back to setbacks of RM60, which is 10 feet. So the structure fits comfortably.
So there's no special variances or anything that are going to happen?
No, it could have 20 feet setbacks on most sides.
Okay. Do we have any questions from the other committee members? Mr. McGivern.
If I could, Councilor Sullivan, just a couple thoughts. I always like to look at this from the historical point of view to where we are today to where we can go. The house that's being moved is 95 years old. It's going to reach its 100-year birthday in 5 years. I think saving an historic house is always something that is special when it can be done and put back into good use. I think the goal is a noble one there. The lot itself, historically, 25 years ago, I was around when this was on a list of buildings to be saved by the city with the help of the National Guard. The building that has been torn down now was boarded up. Some pretty windows, were put with plywood with painted pictures on them. This is the second one of those buildings that is caved in or near caved in. First one was on Maple and Franklin Street. And boarding up buildings is wonderful if you have a potential use, or if you can find someone who can take it over. So for well over 30 years, from this piece of property, the city has gotten zero. And yet it's had to maintain it and do the best and then actually use federal monies to demolish it. So whatever the value of the building is, it's an older building, whatever the assessment comes into play after it's renovated, once it's placed on a new lot, it goes from zero to something that we're getting. And I think that's the home run, because something that is zero doesn't do us any good. And to get some property tax out of it and new housing is a plus for the city. It sounds like it's a plus for the neighborhood, but I think I'll let the neighborhood speak for themselves. But thank you. Oh, and just one other thing, Mr. Chairman, this type of sale under 30B is solely up to the mayor because it's under $25,000 with our approval. We can't negotiate, pick or choose, or go for anything else. We did shoot down the original proposal for a parking lot for a good reason, but now we got something before us that I think might be something better than a parking lot.
I agree.
Yeah, first of all, I just wanted to say that I think that it is a kind of outside of the box thing by Michael Moriarty. Michael Moriarty is doing exceptionally well, being in charge of One Holyoke, and he's doing some great things there. This property, quite frankly, if he didn't come up with this idea, and nobody else stepped forward, it would go to a landfill. It would be torn down, and it'd be an awful shame because I believe it is a official historic building, right?
It's not an official historic building, but it didn't qualify for that, I don't think. But it's been there quite a while, and it certainly has the demeanor of a historic building.
Right, and I also want to applaud People's Bank too for their dedication in keeping the Yankee Peddler as much as they can with the facade. But this, as Councilor McGivern said, this is going to a spot that could really look. I mean, this is going to be a beautiful spot, and I just think that Michael Moriarty is doing good things outside of the box thinking. Thank you.
Okay. In the letter of support we received from the Habitat for Humanity as well, I believe, I wasn't aware of this till today myself, but they're going to be construction on a project on 270 Pine Street. They give indication in their letter of support. So, we just, so it just seems an exciting time for that neighborhood. If we can get the Armory under some form of a project, and it just seems like it's good things are happening there. I have a great personal affinity for it, as Councilor Valentin knows. I grew up on 251 Beach Street, right around the corner here, and she did a great job in getting handicap signs for the people that, or not handicap, but resident parking for the residents that are in there now, and it's just always been, I think, a real. It's a gateway neighborhood. I mean, it's to downtown Holyoke. I mean, as you come down Beach Street into the downtown area, I mean, this house is going to be, as all of the homes and structures in that area, are in full view from Beach Street, and this will certainly be in full view because you got the parking lot from the senior center there, so people are going to be able to look right across the parking lot, and I think it's I think it's going to be a nice looking building, and just a nice addition to a neighborhood that sounds like it's going forward in a really positive direction.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Tallman.
Yeah, thank you, Attorney Dunn, coming down and very familiar with One Holyoke. I think Michael just did a building about a year ago on Beach Street. I was over there with Council Valentin
Right.
a while ago, and the program is great, and to see a lot or an area of the city that has nothing on it and then get a two-family home on there is really a plus for the city, and to bring in the tax dollars, which is severely needed in this community at this time. I was reading here the owner of the house will have to live there for, is it 10 years or 15 years?
He's talking about a deed restriction for probably 15 years, so that.
Okay. So the person has to be there.
Yeah, so the person that buys it will have to, be vested in the property. Last time we wanted somebody to just buy this, as an investment property and live in Boston and buy it under an LLC or something, and then not take care of it. So, I think the world's had enough of that.
Yeah.
In any event, there would be a deed restriction. The person that's going to buy this is going to be required to live there for a long period of time.
Yeah. Now, did they say I know this is something, it said something about here in June. Did they have a time frame of what they're looking at of trying to get this
I think they want,
sold?
I think they want Michael to move on this by June 1st. That's my understanding, yeah.
And will there be something in there if something happens down the road, something in the sale or whatever, where the city could get it back, the lot, if something happens where all of a sudden they can't move the building for some reason?
That's a standard provision in our purchase and sale agreements, a reverter clause.
It will be there.
Say I'm just spitballing here, but say that during the move the house is destroyed for some reason, falls off the truck. There's no longer a project. In that case, One Holyoke may not have any interest in the land, and we will, right? So we that would be a scenario where we probably both want the project to go away. But
Right.
we standardly do a reverter because we want to avoid speculation on land by developers as well.
Okay, that's one of my concerns. If something happens, and plus something being there in that house, I think is important, especially for the neighborhood. Like I said, I like this when I see vacant properties, and actually it's really a home run because you're taking a building that was going to be destroyed, knocked down on Northampton Street, and putting it in an area of the city that I drove by there today, that actually is going to really look good in that neighborhood because other homes that are similar to that building that will be coming over there. So I think it's really a win-win for the city and for the community itself, especially that neighborhood. So.
Okay, Councilor Valentin.
Thank you. Thank you for coming down and explaining a little bit about the process. Just as a reminder to us, we've had an experience with One Holyoke, obviously not moving a house on a truck, but where we actually had a empty parcel on Beach Street, very close to Wisteria Hearst, and One Holyoke purchased it and in a very quick time frame built a two-family home. That home has been occupied for quite a while now. It's a huge improvement to the block visually. And if folks remember, this was the empty parcel that basically had a cement foundation that had been built for, I don't know, probably 20 years, and it had become a problem in terms of litter and other things. So obviously, you know, we have a history with One Holyoke in terms of, you know, the organization coming through and doing the work that they say they're going to do. So I'm not concerned in any way, shape, or form with this. I think this is a win-win. The first time I heard about this proposal, I was happy to hear that not only would it be, you know, saving part of the Yankee Peddler history, but also obviously going from a parcel that went from a building boarded up to a building being demolished to, you know, an empty lot to now this possibility. So it seems like, you know, a lot of movement for one parcel in a short period of time, and I think it would definitely be to improve the area and the neighborhood. I just wanted to ask, because, you know, I understand Councilor Sullivan's point about, you know, we're selling this for $1, and, you know, we look at the assessed value of $31,000, and, you know, the immediate thought is, oh my God, we're losing so much money. That's the first reaction, but the reality is that, as Councilor McGivern said, this is a lot that hasn't been producing anything for a long time. So just in that capacity of what this is going to look like for One Holyoke, would you be able to share with us a little bit about what the budget for this would be, how much the move would be, how much the construction would be, just kind of an idea so that folks know what the expenses are?
It looks like the total expense of it would be over $300,000. There would be a $65,000. Just that's the rough estimate for the move itself. So that would be, you know, there would be a significant cost to doing that. I don't have the breakdown of all of the costs, but you know, there needs to be the rebuilding of the porches. Obviously, you know, the interior of the home would need to be worked upon for it to make it a livable two-family home. So it's approximately, you know, $300,000+ would be the budget for this.
Okay.
So
it's just helpful to know based
Sure.
on when we look at, you know, the
Sure.
land for $1, but in reality, the costs and the expenses
it's a very, very significant. I mean, I've seen the rough numbers, but you know, a lot of those are estimates, and but it's over $300. Over $300,000 would be the cost to One Holyoke to do the project.
Right. Thank
But
you.
they feel, you know, they just feel it's an important project. I mean, you know, that's what they're in the business of doing, is, you know, creating housing opportunities and improving the city. And I think they look upon this as not only, you know, creating a housing opportunity, but saving a historical structure and, you know, adding to a, you know, in a positive sense, a neighborhood, and you know, in a compatible way. That's you know, it's not only are they getting to create a housing opportunity there, but they're creating one in such that it's, you know, it joins the Wisteria Hearst in a little historical sense of you know, saving a structure that's got some historic context to it. So they look at it as you know, something you know, that furthers their mission, not just would it make sense just as a dollar and cents probably development for One Holyoke? Probably not, but it certainly furthers their, you know, their mission and is something they think is would be really, you know, good for the city.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a little, I'm old enough to know these things. Probably I don't know how anybody else remembers them, but the home that you're referencing on Beach Street had a little history to it as well. It was owned for probably 40 or 50 years by a fellow by the name of Ed Hurley. And Ed was a major league umpire in the American League, and you know, was an umpire in World Series, and had a major league career in the city of Holyoke, and that was his family residence probably up until the 1970s. And then not shortly thereafter, after his family, he passed away, and shortly thereafter, after he passed away, and I think his wife passed away as well, the property was transferred, and the property ultimately burnt down. But there is a little bit of history to that parcel as well. He was kind of a back in the 50s and 60s. He was somewhat of a famous person in the city.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions here? Okay, I'd like to open up to the public. Go ahead to the microphone and just please, for the public, state your name and address.
My name's Frances Wilson, and I live at 1421 Northampton Street. You don't need to hear me repeat all the good reasons why it would be wonderful for this project to go ahead. So, and I can't think of anything negative about it. So I just wanted to say I'd really like to see it happen, and I hope that you'll approve it, because it seems everybody involved wins. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Francis.
Hi, good evening. I'm Rich Ahlstrom. I live at 215 Madison Avenue in Holyoke. And I do want to say I have a little backstory about this and some information, but I do think this is a really exciting project for many different parts of the city. I do know that it was the Historical Commission that actually brought this idea forward to People's Bank at the hearing. The People's Bank was really terrific about their wanting to save the Yankee Peddler building, the Hildreth House, but in order to do that, 1850 would have to go. And the Historical Commission had some debate about that, and there was a conversation with the bank and O'Connell Construction right at that hearing if they would consider giving up the building. And it was, I think, just kind of on a whim to see if anybody would be interested, and One Holyoke saw it and took advantage of it. So the house itself is over 100 years old. We think it's closer to, I think it's closer to like 1903. But what somebody, I think Councilor Tallman mentioned, the two houses that are to the immediate right of where this house would be moved to are also two-family homes in the same period. 1850 fits in really beautifully. So to my mind, it's a really exciting coming together of city business interest and a good use of this property. So I totally support the city selling it.
Okay, thank you, Richard.
Hi, my name's Joe Paul, 18 Florence Avenue. I don't want to repeat everything that Rich just said, but this is just, if we had a meeting, the Historical Commission, before, if we had heard about this and had a meeting, we would have a letter of support, but it came up kind of quickly. And so that's why we're here as individuals to support this. It's something we don't get to see a lot. A building actually being saved. We get frustrated a lot. Stuff comes before us and we're not able to save it. And so this would just be, a huge win for everybody. And thank you, I appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, may I just comment to that? I appreciate the Historical Commission members being here in support, and I on behalf of Michael, I apologize for probably not, communicating with them more directly, but I know that it's been on a really fast track, and I don't think Michael at the onset was aware of how fast he would have to move on this, so I apologize for Michael's not, reaching out, so that, because we certainly would have asked for a letter of support, but we very much appreciate your being down here tonight and testifying in favor of this.
Yep. And I'd like to thank the Historic Commission. You left out one important thing. The next door neighbor across the street was moved from Williamsburg. And I think if Wisteria Hearst could be moved from Williamsburg, we could certainly move something from Northampton Street. So, would we like to hear anything else? Anybody else have anything more to say here?
Just, I think William Skinner had a lot more money than one Holyoke.
Good point. Okay, if
Motion-
that's it,
Oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Motion to accept the offer from One Holyoke CDC.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
One last question. What's the time frame? When do you think this will happen?
I think it's by June, I think June 1st, I think. Yeah,
They need to build a foundation very quickly if they have to, yeah.
that's my
So they have somewhere to put it.
That's my understanding by June, yeah.
Trying to think of a fundraiser, how we could have like a moving party,
Thank you.
retirement party for the
Good
boys.
night.
Good night. Thank you. Bye, Jen. Take care.
The,
Oh, yeah, past four,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah.
Say it right
You're right in there, yeah.
Say it right there.
Say it now.
Okay. So for the record, this passed 4-0 with one abstention being Counselor Bartley.
Yep.
What's this one? This is Chestnut.
Yeah.
Okay.
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 Motion to take item 3 off the table.
Second.
On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the motion is that the city council, in accordance with chapter 30B, vote to accept an offer from Wayfinders, Inc. to purchase a parcel of land at 188 Chestnut for $15,500. Said parcel contains .27 acres. Parcel is zoned multifamily residence and professional offices and has an assessed value of $24,500. The mayor has submitted a letter of acceptance and additional information provided to the council by Marcos Merrill. And so we have our Director of Office of Planning and Economic Development, Marcos Merrill, with us, and John Dijek from that office as well. I do want to note for the record, though I couldn't participate in the prior meeting, I know we had the former mayor of Holyoke here, Martin J. Dunn, and along with Joe McGivern here, and so we probably had one heck of a history lesson on the city of Holyoke at some point. So I'm sorry I wasn't part of that, but I'm sure there were some great stories. Marcos, what's happening with this?
If it pleases the chair, we also have Peter Serafino here from Wayfinders. He is the main project manager for Wayfinders on the Library Commons, of which this will be a phase.
So motion to suspend to allow Peter to address
Second.
this? All in favor? Aye. Peter, why don't you just take a seat next to John, and John will make sure the mic is on. And then, Peter, I'm just going to have you state your name and your title into the mic so that Ryan can record that. Did you want him to go first, Marcos?
I could start, that's not a problem. I just want to make sure that he was available.
Yeah, so just hang back for a second, and then Marcos, why don't you tell us what's happening?
Sure. 188 Chestnut used to have a pretty beautiful large white house that suffered a fire several years ago. Because it was a public safety hazard, it was taken down by the city. I don't think CDBG was used for that one. I think it was city funds at that point. This lot had been declared surplus quite a few years ago. I want to say at least 2 years ago. We had been approached by a couple of developers that were maybe interested in it, but ultimately after putting it out to RFP, there had been no interest. Most recently, we got a request of interest by Wayfinders, and we put it out to an RFP period for about a month, and they were the only respondents. Wayfinders is doing a.
Where did you advertise? Where did the RFP? Was that advertised?
It wasn't a full-blown RFP. This one was also valued under $35,000, just like 278 Pine Street. So under the mayor's prerogative to negotiate, we put it on the city website. We notified abutters. And I believe we sent it to a couple of developers out there. So it's not, we could have chosen to just negotiate with Wayfinders, but we did a little bit more than that. John, did we put it on the central register? I can't remember.
It wasn't a central
we did put it on the central register. Okay. So we went above and beyond of what Chapter 30B required of us. Just,
Yeah, I
just
think that's always a great idea, Marcus, when you do that. I think that's a feather in your cap and everybody else's when you try to reach out as much as possible. I think Councilor Sullivan's talked about that to a great extent about reaching out as vast as you can.
Yep. So Wayfinders is doing a significant project on the other side of the street, the opposite block, which is the Library Commons project, which I'm sure Peter can talk to you a lot more in detail than I. But it essentially encompasses 3 existing buildings, 3 structures, and two tracts of currently undeveloped land. They're already gearing up to put together a second phase or a second project after that one. The current project is scheduled to break ground this year. And so the second phase would encompass properties around the first phase. This is one of them, 188 Chestnut. 190 right next to it, which was also demolished privately by a bank that had taken the property by foreclosure. The property at the corner of Essex and Chestnut, which is, I believe it's called the Essex, and property coincidentally currently owned by One Holyoke at the corner of Elm and Essex Streets, as well as a small portion of the land that would not be developed by the current Library Commons project. So I've placed a wider view map in front of you just in case it's not unfortunately printed in color, but the bolded parcels are the ones that encompass phases 1 and 2 of Library Commons, just to the north of the Holyoke Public Library. That's the overview, and I'm sure Peter has more information if you'd like.
Okay, so Peter, just
Yeah, my name is Peter Serafino, project manager with Wayfinders, and I agree with everything Marco said. Just a little bit of background on our sort of first effort in this neighborhood, Library Commons. We've been working on this for about 6 years now. It's been a real long haul. These buildings that we're looking to renovate are in very bad condition. We've been pursuing historic tax credits and other state funding sources, and so we've now pulled it all together, and it looks like we will be breaking ground on that project this summer, as Marcos had indicated. So at the end of last year, as we started to think about the onset of construction at Library Commons, and continued to look around the neighborhood and saw that, as you walked around this site, that there were development opportunities on every corner. So while we had a good bit of money wrapped up in our planning for Library Commons, we didn't want to get ahead of ourselves too fast, but finally come the end of last year, beginning of this year, we started to make some overtures about site control. So one of the first places we went was to the city and asked if property at 188 Chestnut would be available, and responded to the RFP. and we do request your approval on that. The parcel directly adjacent to it that Marcos said had been owned by a bank and had been demolished, that had since been sold to an individual in South Hadley, and I have a purchase and sale agreement out to that individual right now, so we're expecting to sign that up imminently.
What parcel is that, Peter?
The gentleman's name is Thomas Kessler.
90.
Oh, so-
190, I'm
the
sorry,
parcel's
190.
190?
190, yeah, he purchased that from PNC Bank last October, I believe. So and has fortuitously for me agreed to resell the property because honestly, buying 188 and developing it makes much more sense in a second phase for us if we've got 190 with it as well. And I'll tell you in a moment about our plans. The 213, 215 Chestnut building, which is right at the corner of Essex and Chestnut, across the street from the library. It's an attractive historic building. We have a purchase and sale agreement in place on that property already. And then, as Marco said, the parcel at the corner of Appleton and Essex, which we'd already acquired for part of Phase 1, that will also be part of the development plan.
What's that address, Peter?
It doesn't have an address. It's a vacant parcel. It was, I think, originally part of the Skinner property, running along the length of Elm to the corner of Appleton. But there's about a 15,000 square foot parcel at that corner that we're reserving from Phase 1 and planning to develop in Phase 2. And then we've had some conversations with One Holyoke CDC about their parcel at 207 Elm Street, which was last used as River Valley Counseling. So our development plan for the Phase 2 is somewhat different from Phase 1. In Phase 2, we would take the Essex building, the existing building, and look to renovate that. It's currently broken up into about 20 or 21 very small, oddly shaped apartments. And while we will be pursuing historic tax credits for that property, because it's an important part of the financing mechanism, but our plan would be to redevelop it not for about 10 or 11 apartments. We think the apartments are too small and too poorly configured, so if we're allowed to do so under the historic tax credit rules and regulations, we would bring that number down to maybe 10 or 11 apartments. And then the plan for the other vacant parcels would be more of a slab-on-grade, 2 to 3 story construction. As Marcos had mentioned, it's in the RO zoning district, so I think there is a 3-story height limitation. We'd be looking for something more attached row house, townhouse style. I mean, in this neighborhood, you've got some 4, 5, 6-story apartment buildings, and then 1, 2, 3 family, 1, 2, 3 story wood frame, single and multifamily homes. So we think that we're anticipating for this assemblage is somewhat in the middle of those two concepts. And we think we could get 40 to 45. Our goal would be to get 40 to 45 rental apartments out of that. And as with Phase 1, our expectation is to do 15 to 20% of that total unit count as market rate apartments, with the rest of it as affordable housing. So that's our plan, and as I said, we've got site control is underway, and this would be an important component of it.
Peter, thank you very much for that summary. Councilors have questions for either Mr. Serafino or for Marcos or for John? Council Tallman?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Peter, that lot, you put in a bid for that 190, and this is 188. Are you planning on doing something on that lot itself? Right?
Yes.
The
Yes,
building,
so-
like a 2 or 3 story?
Well, we would combine 188 and 190 into essentially a single lot and put, I'm not recalling the initial design. It might be 7 or 8 attached row houses. So it would look as if it's one parcel when we're done. There are again, front yard setbacks, side yard setbacks, parking in the rear off the alley.
Okay. So something similar in the neighborhood where you'd have row houses where there would be enough room, but it would fit in there,
Correct.
the area. Okay. Thank you.
Councilor Valentin?
Thank you. Thank you, Peter, for the update, and I've been a huge supporter of this project since day one. I remember clearly the day you guys did the presentation at the library. I was extremely impressed and continue to be with the hiccups and obstacles that have come along. So most definitely in support of this. What would be the updated, at this point, time frame or timeline with the obstacles that you guys have been facing in terms of the project?
So the first phase of, so we're now fully funded from the Department of Housing and Community Development, and we're sort of entering the closing phase where we would start construction probably August or September. Sooner if I had my way, but it takes a little while to get all the ducks in a row. So if we start in late summer, it would take probably more than a year. We're looking at a 14-month construction schedule, so we would be completing construction at, I guess that would put it at the end of 2019, with occupancy, immediately afterwards. I don't have a timeline on start of construction here. We're just at the very early stages, and so we have to get in line all over again with the HCD for funding for a second phase, but that's the next order of business.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Sullivan?
So, Peter, at the end of the development, who is the ultimate owner of all these 40 apartments?
Sure. So, and this applies to both our Phase 1 and a Phase 2. Because these are, the primary funding source is the low-income housing tax credits, we usually set up a limited partnership. So it's a separate, single-purpose, independent entity that we would establish, let's call it Library Commons Limited Partnership. A Wayfinders controlled entity would be the general partner in that limited partnership, and at the closing of construction, the investor comes in as the limited partner. They're the equity provider that's taking advantage of these federal tax credits. But it will be owned and managed by Wayfinders for the next 15 to 30 years.
Okay, so, this is the first time through this for me. The Wayfinders is a 501c3.
Yes.
Will this property be once it's fully developed, be paying full real estate tax?
It will be paying real estate taxes. In order to take advantage of the tax credits, it has to be a for-profit entity. Because it has deed restrictions on it and income restrictions on it, it's not, we or the entity that owns it has restrictions that other similar properties that don't have those deed restrictions would be free from. So I believe that does affect value, but that's to be determined with the city assessor. But it does pay real estate taxes, yes.
Okay. And it's just what it will be assessed at is what's in question?
That's what I'm trying to say, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for anyone else? Okay, so Peter, yeah, thanks so much for coming in. Marcos, thank you very much, John, coming in. I'll take a motion, I guess.
Motion to accept the offer from Wayfinders?
Second.
On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none? None. Okay, thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. So we'll make a recommendation to the full city council next week. Really appreciate it. Okay, so I'll just get a motion to open up the public hearing.
So moved.
On the motion to open up the public hearing, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. This is a public hearing for 4 special permit applications for Cellco partner, continuation of public hearing from Cellco Partnership CO Verizon Wireless to erect personal wireless service facilities for telecom facilities at 302 Chestnut, 177 West, 2217 Northampton, and 532 South Bridge Street. So the counsel for the Cellco is here. Ms. Fryman, do you want to just introduce yourself and take it away?
Good evening, Ellen Fryman with Schatz, Schwartz and Fenton. I'm representing Verizon Wireless, and I also have my teammates behind me. So, any questions that come up, they can help.
Do they want? Is there one in particular, Ellen, that wants to come in, or none?
Well, I guess we can, if you don't mind, they can all come in, and I'll introduce them.
Sure. Whomever wants to come, want them come on in.
Jay Latore is the radio frequency engineer for Verizon Wireless. Jesse Marino is Proterra, and he's our engineer. Dave Vivian is our site acquisition manager.
Well, I think I got their names and all their titles, but I'll let them go over that again. So,
Okay.
So when we get around to them, Ellen, do you want to sort of tell us where you, because we had a hearing here a few months last November.
We were here November 13th.
Yeah.
We have 4 applications, one at 2217 Northampton Street, one at 532 South Bridge Street, third one at 177 West Street, and the fourth one at 302 Chestnut Street. These are for rooftop installations, so they're considered our small cell installations. They cover several hundred feet within the area of where they're located. So we filed our application back in September. We got heard initially in November, and now we're back here in the end of March. And we hope that we can move on to City Council after tonight. These are areas that need the coverage. I mean, I know I drive around and I have a difficult time getting a signal. This will really help in the areas in which these are antennas are located to provide service to all the residents and businesses that are in the vicinity. Jay can talk specifically if you want to know more about the coverage. So I know there were some concerns about the landlords. Last time we were here, we hope that we can separate that issue and just look at the fact that we are looking for appropriate sites to put the antennas. These sites worked for us after a lot of due diligence and all the hurdles that we have to go through in order to place an antenna. And these are separate tax entity. We'll be paying taxes on the property values of these antennas. We want to build out our system in Holyoke so that we provide good service no matter where you are in Holyoke. Helps, like I said, businesses, residences, students, everyone who lives and works here. So we hope that we will be able to answer any additional questions that you have and can move forward with these.
I'm just taking some notes. Thank you for that, Ms. Freeman. Jay, did you want to just, if you could just introduce yourself, Jay, again, I'm sorry, I got the name down, Jay Latore, but if you just introduce yourself, and if you want to provide any input, that would be great.
Certainly. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Jay Latore. I'm a radio frequency engineer working with Verizon. Our office is 20 Alexander Drive in Wallingford, Connecticut. I am the radio frequency engineer responsible for all of design in Western Massachusetts. I'm a Springfield resident. And here tonight we are here to review 4 special permit applications before you. As Attorney Fryman mentioned, these small cell applications are designed to be small in their physical footprint. They have a small footprint on the proposed rooftops and as well as in their coverage footprint. These facilities provide service in a radius of about 1,000 to 1,250 feet, depending on which facility you are looking at, and that information is included in some of the site justification forms that I have provided for each one of these 4 applications. The proposed facilities will really drastically improve both our coverage in terms of being able to connect to Verizon services as well as our capacity needs in Holyoke. The first 3 facilities, which we call Holyoke Small Cells 2, 3, and 4, these are the facilities that are proposed to be co-located at 302 Chestnut Street, 177 West Street, and 532 South Bridge Street. Are all designed to provide capacity relief to our existing facility at 87 Essex Street. This single facility pretty much provides service to a large section of Holyoke, including this area of the city, as well as sloping down towards the river. This facility is in pretty dire need of capacity offload based on the large demand and increase in services that Verizon and all the carriers have seen over the last 5 years. I had some information here that I had shared last time, but I know not every counselor was here, so I'll just highlight a couple of wireless trends that I have in front of me. 2015, the average smartphone in North America consumed 3.7 gigabytes of data per month, and this is expected to increase to 22 gigabits per month by 2021. That's all driven by the rampant use of wireless technologies for businesses, for things like point of sale or inventory, for education, taking online courses, for personal use, Facebook, Twitter, email, video phone conferences or phone calls with family and friends. I have a whole host of other different statistics here, but another one I always like to mention is that we've already reached the point in our country that there are more homes that are connected solely by a wireless device as opposed to connected by a wireline traditional telephone set. And so the importance of wireless facilities in terms of providing coverage, and as demand increases, augmenting capacity is critical for things like quality of life, but also public safety. So these three facilities, Verizon feels will go a long way to enhance service and capacity and providing a reliable service that our customers expect. Additionally, I wanted to call to your attention the facility that is proposed to be co-located at 2217 Northampton Street. That is the facility Verizon calls Holyoke Small Cell number 6. And this facility is the same concept. It's meant to augment capacity and improve coverage, particularly interior coverage of the plaza and all the surrounding businesses and some of the residences around there. This facility, we feel, will do a really great job of providing relief to our services there, as well as filling a bit of a coverage hole in that particular area where many of our customers, whether they're indoors or outdoors, aren't able to take advantage of some of our higher speed 4G LTE services. I'll let Mr. Moreno speak a little bit about the structural, components of this. But again, I would just like to say that we're appreciative of your time and to have the opportunity to talk to you about our proposal to continue to invest and build additional facilities in Holyoke. And I'm certainly able to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Ms. Sartori, thank you for your presentation. Ms. Fryman, I forgot to thank you for your presentation. Attorney Fryman. Ms. Marino?
Sure. Just piggybacking on
Just your title, if you would.
Sure. My name is Jesse Marino. I'm an engineer working for Verizon. The company I work for is called Proterra Design Group, located in Hadley, Massachusetts.
Thank you.
Just to piggyback a little bit on what Jay said, the 4 sites in front of you here, 3 of them are residential structures. That's the Holyoke SC 2, 3, and 4. These 3 structures are basically 3 to 4 story wood frame, brick facade building structures. They're all built around the same time, circa 1900. On each of these structures, we're looking to co-locate a ballast type frame, which will support some small cylindrical antennas and some radio heads. This small cell technology, the beauty of it is that they can get good coverage with a small footprint and not have to have a lot of the large cabinets and large shelter structures that you would normally see at a macro type site. The 4th site, Small Cell 6, located in the Holyoke Shopping Center there, is a little bit different in that it's a commercial facility. It's located kind of between the Sherwin-Williams and the Bamboo House there, which is a restaurant. That was constructed in the 70s. It's got steel framing, and in that particular area, we're locating on the roof over some steel structures there. Same concept there, a ballast type frame, which means that the equipment will be located on frame and then weighted down sufficiently to resist the loads accordingly.
Your presentation, Ms. Vivian, did you want to add something to this, or are you good to go? If you want to, if you just identify yourself and that sort of thing.
Sure. My name's Dave Vivian. I'm with a real estate consulting group that works for Verizon, structure consulting group, and I was basically the site acquisition agent for these properties. Jay, as the RF engineer, puts out or identifies an area where we need to have property leased and then zoned, and then I identify the properties, lease the properties, and I'm more, excuse me, here to just answer any questions if there are any as far as that whole search process.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate all that. I guess, well, first, yeah, I talk enough. Any councilors have questions at this point? Councilor Roman?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. I have questions specific to the, the need and the coverage lackage of the area. So you said that it only covers a width of about 700 feet, correct?
So let me just make sure I have my full information here. So, but the proposals are going to be roughly in a radius of approximately 1,000 to 1,250 feet. So from one edge to the other would be about a third of a mile.
So do you have that in a map anywhere visually?
Yeah, absolutely. I can hand this to you, but it maybe is included in your application. Let me hand you this
Yeah, they're
photo.
included
This will
in the
be
application.
Beneficial.
We do have the application here, so.
So you'll have to forgive me, I don't have all those colors memorized, but just to give you an idea. So that map represents, and the name of that map probably is, for the other counselors, it's going to say Holyoke Small Cells 2, 3, and 4 on the top, and then it's going to say 2100 megahertz future best server, I believe. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So on that map, what you're seeing is there probably are two larger sections of colors that are a green or a blue, and they're showing coverage from our existing facilities within the city of Holyoke, where we have providing service today. And that service is in need of augmentation, both in filling some of those coverage gaps in interior spaces, as well as just offloading our services. Back in the 90s, when wireless facility companies were starting out, the goal was always just to broadcast the service out as far as you could to try and provide service, because everyone was just happy with just being able to make a phone call. And now the demand for services has grown so much, almost exponentially, that the need for additional facilities to provide smaller pockets of capacity are critical to ensure that our customers, or anyone that uses our services, continues to have both the coverage expectations met and the capacity expectations met. So a lot of times, we get asked, is there anything you can do to make the coverage larger, or why aren't you considering a larger facility with larger antennas? And one of the reasons for that is actually what we are finding more and more is that as we build these facilities, if we build them too large from a coverage footprint perspective, they in themselves, as soon as you build them, begin to exhaust, because we see two common factors when we deploy facilities. The first one is that once they go on air and everyone realizes that their service is a lot better, they start to use it a lot more. There's an interesting study I've read before that says there's a correlation between how much video traffic a user's cell phone sees compared to the resolution of its screen. The nicer the screen, the more likely people are to keep using it to watch videos and things like that. The other component is that as we introduce these facilities into the area, we find that certainly as our customers begin to experience improved service, they talk to their friends or family, and we may see more adoption of Verizon service in that particular area. And certainly our competitors have service in different facilities in Holyoke as well, and that's part of the competitive portion of this.
So thank you for that, and I completely agree with you. So my next question is, within these three areas, because two of the three happen to be in my ward that I represent, is this a high market area as far as businesses with Verizon, or residential customers with Verizon, or cell customers with Verizon? Do you know any of those statistics at all?
I don't know any of the statistics as far as the breakdown between residential and commercial. What we have identified through this process is that for this particular section of Holyoke, pretty much starting at our facility at Essex Street and going all the way down to the river and even across the river, because as you might have mentioned, Counselor, wireless signals don't really have any borders, if you will. So this signal even spreads over across the river into Chicopee and serves some residences there. And really, this particular area of Holyoke is shown to be, in general, a large hotspot for demand, usage, service. This particular sector And I'm not sure what color it might be on that map, but I think if you look at that Holyoke facility towards the top, that yellow sector, that is one of our highest in-demand sectors in the city and in the what I'd call the more urban area of Pioneer Valley, including Springfield. There's a lot of demand on this, and these facilities will go a long way to reducing the strain on that.
It's good for me to know, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know last time, I had brought up issues and concerns with my colleagues around this building. I have since heard from the landlord, so I want to thank this body for actually, doing this process, because I would never have heard from that landlord who did call me, who does have a plan for improvements for this specific property. And whereas, with all due respect, Counselor, you don't want us to look at the quality of life. I have no choice but to, as a ward representative, where these towers are going on. And I might add, I've done some research. The city of Malden has actually implemented an ordinance that requires that these get inspected annually, and there's an annual fee to the cell providers of $500 that they approved to ensure that the building quality is good, by the way. But I thank you guys for this process, and I just wanted to know because, I happen to be a Verizon customer, so I know my service is fine, full bars, 4G LTE, so I just personally haven't experienced this loss at all, and I'm satisfied, full transparency to the public. But with regards to this specific property in South Holyoke, I have heard from the property owner. They have brought on a new property management company, so I'm very pleased for that sake as well, because that is important. I do have to look at the full, when you start putting these cell towers on residential properties. I can't separate the two, and I know the federal, Telecommunications Act, you can't deny any cell tower unless it has to do with very specific and detailed reasons, but we as a body can slow down the process to ensure that there's a good quality of life. So I just wanted to know that perspective, and I thank you for sharing that there's the highest demand down there, but there are a lot of businesses. There's a lot of new development and factories down there, so there might be an increased need. And so, it was just good for me to hear that, so I can report that back to the public. And hey, if it's going to improve the service, I'm okay with that building and property. I can't speak to the pink zone, that's not my ward. But I do think that we have to look at those quality of life issues as a representative of the neighborhoods. But I just want to thank this body for taking the process to slow down. I did hear from the property owner in question, gave a very detailed plan, not that she had to, as to how she was going to improve. And I guess I do have a question for you, sir, with regards to your search process. How did you pick this property? I think that my constituents want to know, how was that site specifically chosen? And when you're doing these real estate and searches in the future, because I know this is only going to increase with telecommunication companies, how does one choose those buildings or those properties, or what's the process?
Sure. Well, what you do is the RF engineer, in this case Jay, will issue a search ring, and specific for, say, a small cell search ring. It's a very targeted area of coverage. So more or less he'd say, okay, give me something within this area, which is more or less maybe like a quarter-mile radius search. And when you're talking about an urban setting like, down in the flats, it's going to be a rooftop build typically. And I say, okay, Jay, take your pick. Here's this property, this property, this property. They're all more or less, in this case, 3 to 4 story, multi-tenanted apartment complexes. Flat roof, we're going to be doing a ballast mount. Take your pick. And so he'll say, okay, this one is my preference. And then from there, I then contact that landlord and negotiate a lease.
Thank you. And like I said, the only reason why I ask is that hopefully in the future,
sure,
another layer to that would be to just Google the property, because this specific property has had multiple noted issues in the news of arrests, quality of life issues, neighborhood protests, drug deals. And so, just again, it's great that that's the preference, and the landlord, doesn't live here, but it still was very responsive. This specific landlord was very responsive after she had heard the news and called me directly to say, hey, these are the steps we're taking to improve those quality of lives, because then this hiccup comes in where I have to, as a ward representative, say, hey, I cannot ignore that fact just because Verizon Wireless wants to put a great cell phone tower to improve my service. If there's a shootout that happens in that same building, how can I, put face in my neighborhood? So again, thank you for explaining that process. I hope that, not to add another layer of service to you, but just a suggestion in the future, because in specifically communities like ours, that is a big difference. That is a big impact as far as, hey, I need to speak to that landlord. And because of this process, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman, if we didn't slow it down and just said yes, I would never have heard of anything. And Carmen and Jerry, who are the president and vice president of the Neighborhood Association, are now in constant contact with the landlord. They have a direct cell phone number for that landlord. So any issues now, as a result of us slowing down the process, Mr. Chairman, have done just that. So I thank you all, and I yield back.
Yeah, so I appreciate, any other counselors want to speak? Okay. Yeah, so we did motion to table it for a period of time. It was my mistake as a chairman. I didn't table it to a date certain, but that was a mea culpa I already made, so I'm not going to make that a second time. But and we are in a public hearing, so I will open up to the public, although I don't see any members of the public here, but we'll still go through the formality. My issue, and I'm glad you heard from a landlord, my issue is that the landlord for at Kmart Plaza is based in Chicago. It's Sears Corporation, and I for one didn't hear from them at all. So Dave, I guess, I'm of two minds on this. One, I heard what everybody said tonight. The due diligence was done here by the engineers and by council, and they're well-respected individuals. I think each has been in this body more than once. So we know them and respect them tremendously. So it's not about that. And we also know that there is a need for cell phone service. I'm glad to have the stat about the gigabytes. It sounds like that's almost a 7-fold increase. If I look, say at least 6-fold increase anyhow over the next few years, if my math is off a little bit, but that's a pretty significant increase on demand. And we want the whole city to be covered and the wards to be covered and all that. So, but my problem still, I haven't moved on. So I heard what council said. I have not moved on because that building that you negotiate with whom you negotiate the lease has been empty for 30 years. In 30 years or more, I'm going to say probably close to 40 years. Where that building is, where it was the former ShopRite, and there's another one before that, owned by Sears Corporation. And my understanding is probably loaded with asbestos, but I can't prove that. That's just anecdotal. So now I have the, I'm not going to vote for this tonight. I'll tell you that. I won't for it. I'm going to try to entertain a motion to see if we can table it, to see if you or somebody can come back to me with an answer from Sears Corporation. And I'm hopeful my colleagues will hear me out on this, because we do have another meeting set for April 30th. And so I'm gonna motion to table this to April 30th, continue public hearing till then, unless you have an answer relative to what Sears is gonna do to that property.
Yeah, well, I'm a little confused because the entity that we've entered into the lease with and the ownership entity is called Brixmor. They are out in Ohio.
Yep.
And I've been in pretty much constant contact with them. I can try to put council in touch with them specifically. They have a local sort of facilities manager, Larry Pope, and then I've been in contact with.
Yeah, Larry and I have emailed before,
Yeah.
but and he gets all my email updates, and he's got a couple of assistants and he's responded to past concerns of mine relative to that plaza, trash, overall conditions, and I'll have to say, he's got a manager, Dave, and I know you want to finish your thought. He's got a manager that's, man, the guy's second to none. I mean, you call him up, it's like he turns it around in a day, whoever it is, and its employee. But Brixmor represents the larger entity, which is Sears, I don't know who the shareholders owe them, whatever. But so that's my concern. So I mean, ultimately I'll vote for this. I'm not going to vote for it tonight until I get some kind of a clarification, or just some kind of not clarification, but at least some kind of a thought process on what they're going to do with now they have. I'm not saying get renters there, but clean up the site. What is it? What's your plan going forward, or not you, but what's their plan going forward for Kmart Plaza? I mean, what other? What else do I have to hang over their heads? I have nothing. I mean, so.
Well, if I may, the parcels are actually separated, and the Kmart portion is not owned or operated by Brixmor. It's a separate ownership entity.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
In
I'd be-
fact, when I first identified
Yeah.
the property, I confused it when I was looking at the lease, and Jesse ended up correcting me on it and said, hey, this is
Okay.
is
So
a different
this is in
ownership entity.
between, this is between the liquor store and you said, and the former bar?
What it is I believe it's the Kmart, as you're facing the plaza, the Kmart to the right is owned by one entity, and then Brixmor owns and operates the remaining part of the plaza. And
Gotcha.
Larry
Okay.
and the owner and
Okay.
Brixmor were in fact, we had to, when we did our design visit, we had to bring out a rod because they were sensitive to the visibility of the antennas from the parking lot.
Okay,
And
so
we had to
Brixmor owns from the,
work our way.
Brixmor owns just from the package store, then south to the end of it?
Yeah.
I believe they roughly own from like where Sherwin-Williams is down to the Stop and Shop. So kind of the center of that parcel. That's our
Oh, that's
understanding.
not their deal then. Okay, that's fair enough then. I could have sworn we were talking about, last time we were here, about right over the ShopRite portion of it, but maybe that was my interpretation. It doesn't matter. Okay, so if that's the case, what can you do? Because I know it's two separate owners, but I thought it was explained to us that the owner in this case was the Sears Corporation where the antenna was going, but you've explained to me that is not the case. That is Brixmor is not Sears, and that is south of the Sears portion. Fair enough, Dave.
But I'm still happy if you need, because I actually emailed them, Ellen asked me to, our Attorney Fryman asked me to
I
check
believe
and
it. Larry
see,
Pope,
you
we've
know, with
emailed a lot
them,
of times,
you know,
and
but
so
yeah.
I don't have any kind of problem with Larry at all, as far as that goes. It's just that one black hole in the middle of the parcel there. It's been a black hole for decades, but if it's not there, that's not where this antenna is going, so that's that. Okay, we are in a public hearing. Any member of the public want to speak in favor or against this? Hearing none. Do you want to add anything else at this point?
No, but if you're then inclined to vote tonight, we'd appreciate that and move this along a little quicker than waiting another month. We appreciate that.
I appreciate that, Ms. Fryman. Any councilors have any questions? Council Tallman?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I just feel that it's just important that we move this along. I mean, they came back here in November, explained everything to us tonight. The buildings, Counselor got his answers met, I believe, right, on that building down there. And there's a reason. I mean, I was looking at this, why 177 West Street, why 302, the different areas of the city. But that's what the coverage is needed, and I think that's important that, us as a city and as a board here, that they look at that and approve this for them, because everything's here. I mean, everything's legal, all the applications are here, everything's explained. In my opinion, I think everything is correct and done properly, so I would like to move to pass these tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and if you recall, Councilor Tallman, we had a 3-2 vote at the last meeting, and I was in the 3, and along with Councilor Sullivan and Councilor Oman to table it. I'm glad we did, because it ended up that it was an important part to table that. We realized there's a need down there. Yeah, we all realize that, but there's a need for other things, those buildings, that were a nightmare. So, but for us doing that, we weren't going to get the explanation that the councilor wanted. So I thought it was a good move. So, there's that. Okay, so with that, we've got a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Okay, on the motion, all in favor? Aye. All right, on the motion to grant a special permit,
Second.
on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we recommend this full city council at the next meeting, okay? Thank you so much. And if I could get one more motion to,
On 5?
yeah, just a motion to take up item 5, please. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so so I want to have a meeting on April 30th. In fact, I have the Mass DOT that's been kind of tough to corral them, committed to April 30th. So that's kind of the date we're going with. So hopefully you can make it. Plus, there's going to be one other item on that agenda of pretty big importance relative to Lynch School. So that'll be there, as well as possibly a couple other things in West Holyoke. So
That's a Monday evening, right?
that's a Monday at 6:30. So there's that one. Okay, folks? All right. And we have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
On the motion to adjourn, all in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.
For your time.